The desert was always quiet in the morning. The wind carried fine grains of sand across the wide land, shaping it into small hills that seemed to breathe and shift under the sun. Villagers who lived nearby had long accepted the desert's rhythm. Every day it was the same, except for the shadow of the great black pyramid that stood tall above the dunes. The pyramid was ancient, older than any written history, and many believed it would stand forever. But on this morning, something had changed. When the villagers stepped outside their homes, they saw no pyramid. The dark giant that had once blocked the sunrise was gone. Where its massive walls had stood for ages, there was nothing but an open field of shifting sand. At first, the people thought it must be a trick of the light. They rubbed their eyes and looked again, waiting for the black stone to appear against the horizon. But the horizon was empty. Only the bright desert stretched out in every direction, as if the pyramid had never been real at all. Confusion spread quickly. Some villagers whispered that it must have been swallowed by the earth. Others claimed the gods had carried it away in the night. The oldest man in the village shook his head and said he had lived his whole life in its shadow, and nothing short of the end of the world could move it. Yet here they were, standing in the heat of the sun, with no proof of the monument that had once towered over them. News traveled fast, and by afternoon, a small team of researchers arrived from the nearby city. Among them were Mira, a young scientist who had studied the desert ruins since she was a student, and Thomas, a historian who had always dreamed of seeing the pyramid up close. They both had written about its strange history. The pyramid had no clear origin. Its stones did not match those found in the desert, and there were no markings to explain who built it. It was as if it had appeared one day and simply stayed. Now, standing before the endless stretch of sand, Mira felt a chill. She set down her equipment case and looked at Thomas. "It should be here," she said. "No storm could have buried something this large in one night." Thomas nodded. He crouched and let the sand run through his fingers. "It is not just gone," he said softly. "The ground looks disturbed, almost as if it moved." The team began to work quickly. They placed markers in the sand, set up scanning tools, and tried to measure what lay beneath the surface. But the instruments flickered and gave strange readings. The signals bounced back as if the ground itself was shifting in ways they could not explain. That night, the villagers gathered with the researchers. A fire burned in the center of the camp, and people shared food and stories. One of the older women spoke in a hushed voice. She said her grandmother had told her that the pyramid was alive. It was not a tomb or a temple, but something waiting for the right time to move again. Mira listened carefully. She had always believed the pyramid was a remnant of a lost civilization, but the woman's words stayed with her. When the fire burned low, Mira walked to the edge of the camp and stared out at the dunes. The moonlight shone on the sand, and for a moment she thought she saw the grains form straight lines like hidden walls beneath the surface. The next morning, Thomas woke early. He found Mira already at the site, sketching what she had seen in the night. The patterns were faint but clear enough to raise questions. "It is not random," she said. "The sand is moving with purpose. It is arranging itself. I think the pyramid did not disappear. It changed." Thomas looked at her drawing and then at the horizon. His eyes narrowed. "If you are right, then we are not dealing with ruins at all. We are dealing with something alive." The thought hung in the dry air, heavy and impossible to ignore. Behind them, the desert winds grew stronger, lifting sand into spirals that spun like tiny storms. The villagers watched nervously, clutching their scarves against their faces. The pyramid was gone, but its absence felt like a presence more powerful than stone. As the sun rose higher, Mira and Thomas exchanged a look. They both knew this was only the beginning. Something ancient had stirred beneath the desert, and it was not finished. The second day in the desert began with unease. The sun rose red on the horizon, casting long shadows across the dunes. The villagers watched the shifting sands where the pyramid once stood, their eyes filled with both fear and wonder. They could not understand how a monument of stone had vanished overnight, leaving behind only moving patterns in the earth. Mira stood near the center of the empty space with a scanner in her hands. She frowned as the machine produced another unreadable signal. The screen glitched with lines of static. She tapped it, but the result was the same. "These devices are not broken," she said firmly. They are being confused by something beneath the surface. Thomas joined her, brushing sand off his jacket. He had been awake most of the night, listening to the strange hums that rose from the dunes. They were faint, almost like whispers, but they carried across the air with a steady rhythm. "The ground is not still," Thomas replied. "It feels alive. When I stood here last night, I thought I could feel it breathing." The villagers did not go near the area. They watched from a distance, whispering among themselves. Some said the pyramid had gone to rest and would return only if left alone. Others said it had left to call its masters back. Mira ignored the fearful talk. She pushed her equipment aside and dropped to her knees, letting the sand run through her fingers. The grain slid smoothly but left faint trails of light that glowed for a moment before fading. She held her breath. "Thomas," she said quickly, "look at this." He knelt beside her and saw the glow. It was faint, like starlight hidden beneath the sand. He placed his hand down flat, and for an instant the glow spread outward in a perfect circle. Then it disappeared. "It reacts to touch," Thomas whispered. Mira nodded. "This is not simple earth. It is holding something. It is hiding something." They decided to dig. The team brought out shovels and tools, though the desert resisted them. Every time they cleared a space, the sand seemed to slide back, filling the hole as if it refused to be opened. Hours passed with little progress. Sweat rolled down their faces and frustration grew. By afternoon, the wind picked up. Fine dust filled the air and the dunes began to change shape faster than before. The villagers ran to secure their tents while Mira and Thomas shielded their faces. The storm seemed unnatural, as if centered on the exact spot where the pyramid had stood. Through the swirling dust, Mira saw something remarkable. The ground beneath the storm did not scatter like ordinary sand. Instead, it moved in straight lines, forming patterns that grew sharper with each gust of wind. "Geometric shapes," Mira shouted over the storm. "Triangles, squares, circles. The ground is drawing." Thomas squinted through the blowing sand and confirmed what she said. The shapes connected like pieces of a puzzle. They stretched across the desert floor, linking into one another until a massive design appeared. When the wind finally eased, the team stepped back to see what had formed. It was a giant circle etched into the sand, wide enough to hold the missing pyramid. Symbols glowed faintly within the lines, moving as if alive. Mira's voice trembled, though she tried to stay calm. "This is not erosion. This is a system. Something intelligent created this." The villagers fell silent. Even the children who had been crying during the storm were now staring in awe at the strange glowing circle. That night, the camp was restless. Some villagers wanted to leave immediately, saying the desert was cursed. Others begged Mira to stop digging, fearing they were disturbing forces too great to understand. But Mira could not turn away. She sat by the fire, sketching the patterns from memory. She compared them to ancient markings found on ruins in distant lands. None matched perfectly, but the style suggested a shared origin. Thomas sat across from her. "We may be standing above a machine," he said. "Something buried under this desert. Something vast." Mira looked up at him. If the pyramid was never a building but part of this machine, then it did not vanish. It transformed. As they spoke, a low vibration spread through the ground. Everyone felt it under their feet. The fire shook and the tents rattled. The sand inside the great circle began to sink, as if a drain had opened deep below. The villagers cried out in fear, but Mira and Thomas remained frozen, watching. The glow returned, brighter now, pulsing in rhythm with the vibrations. The pattern shifted, forming new designs as though the desert itself was speaking. Then, without warning, the vibration stopped. The sand settled and the glow dimmed to nothing. The desert was quiet again, but Mira knew the truth. The ground had not been shaking from natural causes. It had been a warning, or perhaps an invitation. Something hidden beneath the sand had awakened, and it was waiting. As the night stretched on, Mira could not sleep. She stood at the edge of the glowing circle, staring into the endless dunes. For the first time, she wondered if the pyramid had been guarding the world rather than simply resting upon it. The desert was no longer silent. It was alive, and it was watching. Morning light spread across the desert, but the villagers were restless. They had seen the glowing circle in the sand the night before, and many wanted to leave. Some packed their belongings, ready to return to safer lands. Others stayed behind, too curious or too afraid to move without knowing what would come next. Mira stood in the middle of the great circle, holding her notes. She had traced the glowing patterns until they faded, and now she compared them to the sketches she had made earlier. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were sharp with determination. "This is no natural shape," she said to Thomas, who stood nearby. "The lines connect like circuits. The desert floor is hiding a design. If we follow it, we may find an entrance." Thomas adjusted his pack and looked down at the sand. He had studied ruins across many lands, but none behaved like this. "If there is an entrance," he said quietly, "then it has been sealed for longer than history remembers. And if it is open now, it is not by chance." The rest of their small team joined them. They carried ropes, lanterns, and tools. Even though fear pressed against them, curiosity drove them forward. With slow, steady steps, they began to walk along the circle's edge, searching for any sign of weakness in the sand. Hours passed under the blazing sun. At last, Mira noticed a shallow dip where the lines of the pattern crossed. She knelt down and brushed away the sand. Her fingers touched something hard and smooth beneath the grains. "Metal," she said, her voice rising with excitement. Together, they cleared the sand until a wide plate was revealed. Strange symbols were etched into its surface. The markings shimmered faintly as if light moved beneath the metal itself. The villagers gasped when they saw it, but none dared come closer. "This must be a hatch," Thomas said. "A door leading down," Mira nodded. She pressed her palm against the plate, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the ground trembled softly. The symbols lit up brighter, spreading across the plate like veins of fire. With a grinding sound, the metal circle began to sink. The team stepped back as the hatch slid open, revealing a dark shaft beneath. A cool gust of air rose from below, carrying the smell of stone mixed with something sharp like ozone. The villagers whispered prayers, but Mira and Thomas leaned forward to peer into the darkness. Lanterns were lit, and ropes were tied. Mira insisted on going first. She clipped the rope to her belt and began her descent, the lantern swaying in her hand. The shaft walls were smooth and lined with more glowing symbols that lit up as she passed. Her feet touched solid ground far below. She raised her lantern and gasped. The chamber stretched wide before her, larger than any cavern she had seen. The walls were not stone, but a polished metal that shimmered in the lantern light. Symbols ran across every surface, shifting slowly as though alive. They formed and reformed in patterns that almost looked like language. Thomas descended next, his lantern casting a second pool of light. His eyes widened at the sight. "This is no tomb," he said. "This is construction beyond anything humanity has known. It is not built, it is grown." The rest of the team joined them, their footsteps echoing on the floor. The chamber stretched into the darkness, and the air hummed with quiet energy. It felt as if the walls themselves were breathing. Mira stepped forward. Her lantern caught something at the center of the chamber, a raised platform circular in shape with pillars surrounding it. She moved closer, her heart beating fast. The platform was covered in the same glowing symbols, but these were brighter, pulsing as if responding to her presence. She reached out and placed her hand on the surface. At once the room came alive. Light burst from the pillars, filling the chamber with a white glow. The walls shifted, showing scenes like moving pictures, landscapes of stars, worlds covered in oceans, towers reaching into skies of colors Mira had never seen. The images spun around them, wrapping the team in visions of the cosmos. The villagers above cried out when the desert floor lit up, glowing through the sand as if the earth itself had turned into a lantern. Thomas shielded his eyes, overwhelmed. "It is a record," he whispered. "This chamber is telling us a story." The images showed a vast structure descending from the sky, its shape like the missing pyramid. It landed on the desert, then sank beneath the sand, leaving only the black shell above as a marker. The pyramid was not a tomb or a temple. It was a door. Mira's hand shook as she pulled it away. The lights dimmed, but the hum in the chamber remained. She turned to her team. "This is proof," she said. "The pyramid was part of something far greater. It has been waiting for us to find it." Thomas looked uneasy. "If it has waited, then it has also chosen this moment to awaken. The question is why now?" The team stood in silence, listening to the low hum of the chamber. Above them, the villagers gathered at the edge of the hatch, their fearful faces peering down into the light. None dared descend, but they knew something had changed. Mira clenched her lantern and looked deeper into the chamber's endless halls. She knew they had only touched the surface of what was hidden. The pyramid had vanished from the earth, but here beneath the sand, its true form was beginning to reveal itself, and whatever force had built it had just stirred awake. The chamber beneath the desert was alive with faint light. The walls glowed with shifting patterns as if the symbols were aware of the people standing inside. Mira held her lantern high, though the glow from the walls already filled the space with a silver hue. The air was cool and carried a low hum that vibrated softly in their chests. Thomas stood near one of the pillars, running his fingers along the glowing lines. They moved away from his touch like ripples in water. He stepped back quickly. "It reacts to us," he said. "Not like stone or metal, it feels aware." Mira nodded, her eyes locked on the central platform. She still remembered the vision that had flashed before them. The image of the pyramid falling from the sky and burying itself deep beneath the sand. That vision had not been carved by human hands. It was a message waiting to be seen. The rest of the team spread out, carefully exploring the chamber. They set down small instruments to measure the air, the temperature, and the strange energy that seemed to flow around them. But just like before, the devices failed. Screens filled with static, numbers reset, and batteries drained faster than expected. One of the researchers, a man named Leon, raised his broken scanner. "It is useless," he said. "The chamber does not allow us to measure it. It wants us to see it with our eyes, not with our tools." Mira was about to respond when the floor shifted beneath them. A vibration ran through the chamber, stronger than before. Dust fell from the high ceiling and the glowing symbols pulsed faster. The villagers above shouted in alarm, gathering near the open hatch. Some cried out for the team to come back at once. Others fell to their knees, believing the desert itself was calling to them. Mira steadied herself and moved closer to the platform. "It is not collapsing," she said quickly. "It is starting something." The hum grew louder, filling their ears with a steady rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. The walls rippled with light, then bent into shapes that stretched across the chamber. Suddenly, beams of energy connected from one pillar to another, forming a ring of light around the platform. Thomas stared in awe. "It is activating. We triggered it somehow." Before anyone could react further, the ring of light pulsed and sent a burst of sound through the air. The team covered their ears, but the sound was not only noise. It carried structure, like a voice speaking in a language they could not understand. The villagers above fell silent, listening. The sound echoed out of the chamber, across the dunes, and into the wide desert night. Then the impossible happened. The noise broke into fragments, shifting through tones and pitches. At first, it sounded like many voices speaking at once, layered and jumbled. Then the fragments began to form recognizable words in different tongues, old languages, forgotten languages, and finally, words in clear human speech. "You have awakened us." The words rang out across the chamber, echoing into the desert above. The villagers gasped, while the researchers froze in shock. Mira felt her skin grow cold, her heart racing. Thomas whispered the words again under his breath. "You have awakened us." The chamber pulsed with light as though answering. The hum grew steady again, no longer chaotic but smooth, like a machine that had reached balance. Mira stepped closer to the platform, her voice steady though her hands shook. "Who are you?" she asked, her words carrying through the quiet. The chamber responded with another pulse of light. The symbols on the walls shifted, forming new shapes. This time the images showed not the desert but the sky filled with stars. A line of light stretched across the stars, pointing toward worlds far away. Leon spoke in awe. "It is showing us where it came from, or perhaps where it is connected." Thomas frowned deeply. "Or where its creators are waiting." The voice returned, calm and unhurried, though now it felt closer, as if it were speaking inside their own minds. "Long have we slept. Long have we hidden. Humanity was not ready. Now you have come, and the time is near." Fear swept through the group. Some stepped back, while others looked toward the rope leading up to the surface. The villagers above cried out again, begging them to leave the chamber, but Mira stood her ground. Her heart pounded, yet her eyes did not look away from the glowing platform. She knew this was more than discovery. This was first contact. "Why here?" she asked aloud. "Why hide in our desert? Why wait for us?" The walls shimmered with new patterns and another vision filled the chamber. It showed Earth as it might have looked thousands of years ago. The pyramid descended from the sky, carrying light that spread across oceans and mountains. Then the vision showed people, early humans, gazing upward in awe. The voice spoke again. "We watched, we waited. You were not yet ready. The gate closed and the sands covered it. Now your hands have opened it once more." Tomas stepped forward, his voice heavy with concern. "If this is a gate, then what is it opening to? What will step through? The hum grew deeper, vibrating the ground beneath their feet. The villagers above screamed as the desert itself seemed to pulse with light. The words returned one final time, strong and certain. The choice is yours, then silence. The hum faded. The light dimmed. The chamber returned to its quiet glow, as if nothing had spoken at all. The team stood frozen, each one knowing the world above would never be the same again. Humanity had not only uncovered a hidden secret in the desert, they had awakened something waiting for an answer. The desert night was heavy with silence after the voice faded. The villagers huddled around their fires, too frightened to sleep. They had heard the words carried out of the chamber, spoken in a language every ear could understand. Some prayed, some wept, and some stared at the dunes as if waiting for the earth to open again. Below, inside the chamber, Mira and the team remained near the glowing platform. The symbols had dimmed, but the memory of the voice lingered in their minds. Every person felt the same weight, that they had spoken with something older and greater than humanity itself. Thomas broke the silence first. "It said the choice is ours," he whispered. "But what choice do we have? We do not even understand what it is offering." Mira kept her eyes on the walls, which still glowed faintly as if they were breathing. "Whatever this structure is, it has been here for thousands of years. It chose this moment to awaken. That means we were meant to find it. We cannot walk away now." The rest of the team shifted nervously. Some wanted to leave the chamber at once and seal the hatch. Others felt the same pull as Mira, the call of discovery, the need to see what waited beneath the sands. Before they could decide, the ground above began to tremble. Sand rained down from the ceiling, and the villagers screamed in terror. The dunes around the hatch moved like waves, rolling outward in a wide circle. Mira and Thomas rushed to the rope and climbed quickly to the surface. When they reached the top, they froze. The desert was glowing. The great circle etched into the sand now burned with bright white light, visible for miles. The villagers shielded their eyes, clutching one another. At the center of the circle, the ground sank again, deeper this time. The shifting sand pulled inward like a whirlpool swallowing the desert. Then something rose. At first it was only a faint outline, but as the sand cleared, a familiar shape appeared. The pyramid. It rose higher and higher, built not of black stone this time, but of shining crystal that caught the moonlight. The surface pulsed with colors that moved like rivers, flowing across its towering walls. What had once been a silent monument of stone now stood as a beacon of living light. Gasps and cries filled the camp. Some villagers fell to their knees, convinced they were witnessing the work of the heavens. Others ran, vanishing into the dark dunes, unable to face the sight. Mira's eyes widened in awe. "It never vanished," she breathed. "It transformed. It has returned." The pyramid stood taller than before, its peak sharp against the starry sky. Light poured from its edges, filling the desert with a glow so strong it erased the shadows. The wind stilled and the air felt heavy, charged with invisible energy. Thomas stepped closer, his voice unsteady. "It is no monument," he said. "It is a vessel, or perhaps a gateway, just as the vision showed us." As if in answer, the walls of the pyramid rippled. A section of the crystal shifted and slid aside, revealing a wide opening. From within came a soft radiance, brighter than fire but gentle on the eyes. Everyone fell silent. From the opening, shapes began to emerge. At first they looked like shimmering figures made of smoke and light, their outlines shifting with every step. As they drew nearer, their forms grew clearer, tall, slender beings with limbs that glowed faintly, like glass filled with starlight. Their faces were smooth, their eyes shining with calm awareness. The villagers trembled, clutching each other. Some wanted to flee, but their legs would not move. The team stood frozen, caught between fear and wonder. Mira felt her breath catch. These were not shadows or illusions. They were alive. The ones who had built the pyramid had returned. The beings stopped at the edge of the glowing circle. They did not speak with mouths, but every mind present heard the same words, calm and clear. "You opened the gate. You called us forth." The words echoed without sound, filling their thoughts like a shared dream. No one answered at first. The desert itself seemed to hold its breath. At last, Mira stepped forward. Her legs trembled, but her voice was steady. "We did not mean to summon you." But we could not ignore what was hidden beneath the sand. "We seek only to understand." The beings regarded her silently, their shining eyes fixed on her. Then the voice returned, carrying both patience and weight. "Long have we waited. Humanity has grown. You stand at the edge of choice. The gate may remain closed and the sands will hide us once more, or you may step forward and the path beyond this world will open. The villagers gasped. The team exchanged nervous glances. Thomas's face was pale. They are giving us a choice, he said softly. To turn away or to go where no one has gone before. The being stood still, glowing gently in the desert night. The pyramid behind them pulsed with light, as if alive, as if listening. Mira's heart pounded. She knew this was no dream, no trick. This was a turning point in human history. The pyramid had not been a ruin. It had been waiting, and now the choice was truly theirs. The night air around the glowing pyramid was still, but every heart beat fast with fear and wonder. The tall beings of light stood silently waiting for an answer. Their calm presence filled the desert, yet the weight of their words pressed heavily on everyone who had gathered. Mira felt the eyes of the villagers on her. Many wanted to run to escape into the dunes, but others stayed rooted in place, unable to look away. She turned her gaze back to the beings. Their forms shimmered, their eyes glowing like stars, and though their faces did not move, their presence felt patient, almost gentle. Thomas stepped closer to Mira, his voice low. We must think carefully. They offer us something greater than we can imagine, but there may be danger we cannot see. Mira nodded, though her heart leaned toward curiosity more than fear. If they wished to harm us, they would not give us a choice, she whispered. They could have taken what they wanted long ago. Instead, they waited. One of the beings raised a hand and the air shifted with a hum. Images appeared above the glowing circle, floating in the night sky like a vision. The first image was Earth, seen from far above, a blue world wrapped in white clouds. Then stars filled the vision, endless and bright. Lines of light stretched from one star to another, forming paths like roads across the universe. The voice came again, clear in every mind. Beyond your sky lies more than you know. We offer you a step forward, a gate into the stars. With it your kind may travel, may learn, may join others who wait. The villagers gasped at the sight. Some fell to their knees, awed by the vision of the earth and stars. Others covered their faces, afraid of what such knowledge meant. Thomas's eyes remained fixed on the images. They are showing us travel between worlds, he said. If this is true, then the pyramid is not just a monument. It is a bridge. The vision changed. Now the sky showed not only stars, but also dangers. Worlds burning, ships locked in battle, dark shapes moving across galaxies. The images were fast and unsettling. The being's calm voice followed. Choice brings risk. To step forward is to face more than wonders. To remain is to wait in silence, safe but blind. The team shifted uneasily. Leon spoke softly. They warn us. The galaxy is not empty. If we join it, we may face not only knowledge but conflict. Mira lifted her chin. We cannot hide forever, she said. If they have watched us for so long, others may have too. Sooner or later, someone will come. Should we not be prepared? The villagers argued among themselves. Some cried out that humanity was not ready, that the beings should return to their hidden chamber and let the sands cover them again. Others shouted that this was the chance of a lifetime, a gift beyond measure. Thomas raised his hand, asking for silence. We must decide not as frightened villagers or wandering researchers, but as humans. This choice will not affect only us. It will affect everyone, everywhere. The beings remained still, offering no pressure, no command. Their glowing forms radiated patience, as if they had all the time in the world. Mira stepped closer to the circle. She looked at the beings, her voice steady. If we accept, what will happen to us? What will happen to Earth? The voice answered with calm certainty. The gate will open. Your people may enter and see beyond. Knowledge will come, faster than your history has known. But with knowledge comes challenge. Strength will be required. Unity will be tested. The choice cannot be undone. Mira's breath caught, but she did not step back. And if we refuse? The being's eyes glowed brighter. Then the gate will close. The sands will cover it once more. The memory will fade as it did before. You will remain as you are until another age calls us again. Silence followed. The firelight from the village flickered weakly against the brightness of the pyramid. Every person felt the weight of the moment. To step forward was to embrace the unknown. To refuse was to return to safety, but at the cost of turning away from the stars. Thomas spoke slowly, his voice heavy. This is not a decision for us alone. It is for all of humanity, but fate has placed it here in our hands. Mira's eyes burned with determination. Then we must choose boldly. If humanity is to grow, it cannot do so by hiding. We must face the risks, or we will remain trapped in the same shadow forever. Her words spread through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement. Others shook their heads in fear, but all listened. The villagers fell quiet, waiting for the decision. The beings of light remained patient, their gaze steady. They did not push, did not threaten. They simply waited as they had waited for ages beneath the sand. At last, Mira stepped onto the edge of the glowing circle. Her voice was clear, carrying across the desert night. We will not hide. We choose to step forward. The beings' forms brightened, their glow spreading across the desert like dawn breaking over the horizon. The pyramid behind them pulsed with radiant light as if answering the choice. The ground vibrated softly, not with warning this time, but with welcome. The gate had been chosen. The sands would no longer remain silent. The desert was silent, yet it felt alive. The glowing pyramid pulsed with light, spreading waves across the dunes as if the earth itself was breathing. The villagers stood in awe, their faces lit by the strange glow. They had heard Mira's words. They had seen her step forward. The choice had been made. The beings of light moved closer, their presence calm but powerful. Their voices echoed again in the minds of all. Your path is chosen. The gate will open. Humanity will take its first step into the greater sky. Mira stood tall, though her heart raced. Thomas came beside her, steadying his breath. He whispered softly to her. We are standing at the start of something no human has ever known. Do you feel fear? Mira gave a small smile. Yes, but I feel hope more. The pyramid began to shift. Its crystal-like surface rearranged itself, folding and stretching until a tall archway appeared at its center. Inside the arch, the air shimmered like water. The desert wind carried grains of sand into the opening, but instead of falling through, the sand dissolved in light. Gasps rose from the crowd. Children clung to their parents, wide-eyed. The villagers could hardly believe what they saw. The researchers tightened their grips on their notebooks and equipment, knowing they were witnessing something far greater than science alone. The beings of light gestured toward the gate. The door is ready. Step forward and a path will show itself. Thomas looked at Mira. Do we go first? She nodded slowly. If not us, then who? We were the ones who found the chamber. We must lead. They turned to the people behind them. Mira raised her voice. No one is forced. This choice is for humanity. But it begins with courage. We will enter first. If we do not return, let the memory of this night remain. But if we do return, we will come with knowledge to share. The crowd murmured, torn between fear and faith. Some bowed their heads, others lifted their eyes with new strength. The villagers knew they might never see Mira and Thomas again, but they also knew someone had to walk through. The two stepped forward. The arch loomed above them, bright yet inviting. As they approached, a low hum filled the air. The gate rippled, showing shifting images of stars and distant lands. With one final glance at their companions, Mira and Thomas stepped through. The sensation was unlike anything they had ever known. For a moment, their bodies felt weightless, their senses overwhelmed by rushing light. The air disappeared, replaced by a strange warmth. Then in a blink, the desert was gone. They stood on solid ground, but not sand. Beneath their feet was a smooth surface glowing faintly, like glass alive with energy. Above them stretched a sky unlike any sky on Earth. Stars burned bright and near, and great shapes floated across the horizon. Vast structures that looked like cities hanging in space. Mira gasped. We are not on Earth anymore. Tomas's voice trembled with awe. We are standing on another world. The beings of light appeared beside them, unchanged by the journey. Their voices spoke again. This is the threshold. Beyond it lies the network of gates built long before your time. Many civilizations have passed through. Now it is your turn. As they walked, Mira and Thomas saw figures in the distance, beings of different shapes and sizes, some tall and slender, others small and heavy, each moving with purpose. They were not hostile. They walked calmly as if the arrival of new travelers was expected. Mira whispered, We are not alone. There are others. The beings of light nodded. Here all paths meet. Knowledge is shared. Peace is taught, though not always kept. You will find both friends and challenges here. Humanity must decide how it will stand among them. Thomas's heart filled with wonder and responsibility. We must return and tell our people. They must know the truth. The beings raised their glowing hands. You will return. The gate will remain open for your kind. But the first step had to be chosen with courage. You have given it. The air shimmered again, and Mira felt the pull of the desert calling them back. She looked once more at the stars of this strange sky, committing them to memory. We will come again, she promised. In a rush of light, they were back in the desert. The pyramid still glowed, and the crowd waited breathlessly. When Mira and Thomas appeared, safe and alive, cheers broke out across the dunes. Tears streamed down faces. Children clapped and shouted. Hope surged like fire. Mira raised her voice, filled with strength. We have seen beyond. There are stars waiting for us and others who walk among them. The gate is real and it is ours. Humanity's future has begun tonight, Thomas added, his voice steady. The path is not without danger, but it is open. We are not alone anymore. The villagers knelt in the sand, overcome with awe. Some prayed, some laughed, some simply stared at the glowing archway with trembling hands. For them, the world had already changed. The beings of light spoke one final time. The choice is made. Humanity has stepped forward. May you walk with wisdom. Their forms shimmered, then slowly faded into the glow of the pyramid until they were gone. The arch remained, steady and waiting, a silent promise of the stars beyond. Mira and Thomas stood together, watching the horizon brighten with the first light of dawn. The desert winds carried the scent of new beginnings. The sands would never hide the truth again. Humanity had taken its first step, and the universe was waiting.